Hi, good morning, Jennifer. Good to see you here. And I would like to introduce my audience because they have been waiting for several days to
I
have you on
know.
this episode.
Thank you for
And
having.
that's how, yeah. So for my audience, just I would like to give very short introduction about Jennifer because Jennifer doesn't need so much introduction. She is known, as a Chief Humanity Officer. So she's a founder of Chief Humanity Officer, Devon Reddy M&A consulting firm. So I think day one is so much important in M&A. And we all know that how critical it is day one to make everyone, be ready. So thanks, Jennifer. I think this is a, great name you have selected, day one ready, because we have spent several years and day one was always very critical. So thanks. I'll surely like to know more about this. So just for our audience, Jennifer is, primarily Chief Community Officer of, and she runs the One Ready program. It's a consulting firm, and she advises, all things, business leaders, owners, and senior executives on how to prepare and manage the people challenges. So if you know, people challenges are the, most challenging part in business transaction, and Jennifer will surely put some light, you know, how she really solved this critical challenge. And also, you might have already know that Jennifer have been authored so many books. And now, what a survival guide for thriving through merger and acquisitions. And this is the number one book in the Amazon. I think I think audience know, and we'll also share the important these links because it's a very important book, Jennifer. And I'd like to my audience to go through it. So now I directly go and ask Jennifer to give a short introduction to our audience person.
So, why don't we, I can answer the question about day one ready. And it's funny that you like the name of my company so much. I think it's because, Dharmendra, we have a similar perspective on mergers and acquisitions in that day one isn't the day you announce it. Day one is the day that you think about a merger or acquisition, you're contemplating it, and it's all the things you need to think about to be day one ready. So in my case, I advise business owners, executives, private equity on how to be prepared for the people challenges.
Right.
You focus on the integration, the platform, the systems integration, all of the things that can really significantly undermine the deal. But we both agree to be day one ready, you have to be thinking about all those aspects before you announce the deal.
Exactly.
And my experience, and I've experienced 3 separate multi-billion-dollar acquisitions as a corporate marketing executive. And what I felt was not adequately addressed, and why I called my company Day One Ready, is they use the announcement as the starting line. And I said, well, no. You need to think about these things well in advance and prepare for them. And so that's why I called it Day One Ready. So as you highlighted, I'm a founder of Day One Ready and took the title of Chief Humanity Officer because in my experience, and also from the point of view of the executives I interviewed 60 executives for my book, Now What? And consistently, what came up in those interviews was an appreciation after several failures, after they'd had some stumbles in their M&A dealings, that they hadn't considered the people piece more adequately. And one CEO in particular said to me that the M&A experience was humbling.
Yeah.
He went in, had done many acquisitions and realized over time that by not paying attention to the people challenges and how people react to change, that is what had led to them not being as successful as he had hoped. And it was a lesson that he learned and was able to make future acquisition deals more successful. So really my focus has been on helping executives be smarter, and also the individuals who are in the middle of the merger or acquisition, right? I say that my book is for those people who aren't in the room when the deal is made, but who are burdened with the execution.
Right.
And thankfully, the book's been very successful.
Yes. So thanks for this introduction, and I think this is a great because, as you rightly pointed out, Jennifer, that day one readiness is not when you are going to announce the deal, but it starts much early in the deal when you are thinking for going for a deal. In fact, that
Yep.
is the time you start preparing for day one, right? And this is amazing because most of the deals I have seen that the team may struggle till last day. The deal have to be announced tomorrow, and still people are preparing, right?
Right.
So several meetings and change management. So I think several times in my experience, I have seen that people who are coming also from acquired company, right?
Mhm.
So we also
Right.
look at while we are acquiring a company, we make sure that the acquirers and acquiree both are building a good team so that entire change management process, the day one readiness is more effective. So thanks for giving this name. I think this means a lot for any dealmaker. So I have curated some of the questions for Jennifer. Maybe maybe I'll be asking those questions, and I would surely like to know your view because our audience would like to know more about this. So so my topic was more on what is changing in M&A. So what are the M&A trend are changing from traditional way of doing to now. So what are the important changing M&A deal trends? And if you look at, I have first question to you is how has the past year influenced M&A? Either you look at the deal standpoint, or you look at business, or look at workforce standpoint. So how you think that this past year have influenced the M&A?
So remember, I'm always going to look at it through the people challenges, the organizational challenges. From a deal standpoint, as you know, deals have exploded. They took a pause. They didn't stop in 2020, but they took a pause. But already, halfway through 2021, we're at $2 trillion in deals globally, and that's halfway through the year. And I think it's Refinitiv Intelligence that did that particular report. That's the highest it's been in the decade that they've been tracking M&A deals. And our year's not over. From the standpoint of deals that are happening, as you would expect, and it's one of the unfortunate potentially unfortunate downsides is so many businesses are struggling. You have a lot of business under duress. And so many more deals are happening where, whether it's private equity or larger companies that are able to acquire distressed assets. But what I'm also seeing is that the valuations are exploding, right? You hear 10 times valuation, and what concerns me about that is the fact that with high valuations come high expectations of the numbers you're going to hit. You and I have both seen from different sides of the M&A deal that when your valuation is significant and the expectation is high, it's often very difficult to hit those numbers because they're based on a strategy, but you don't know how people are going to react. You don't know how they're going to be able to adjust to this being acquired or merging together with another company. And then you add on to that the uncertainty that continues around the pandemic. So my greatest concern about the influence of mergers and acquisitions in the past year is these high valuations and the ability of companies to actually hit those numbers, given everything that you typically experience post M&A deal, complemented with pandemic stress and uncertainty.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. I think this was very good inputs from you. And
Are
so
you seeing
now,
the same thing? Do you have a similar impression?
yes. So I think, as you rightly said, the last year have been due to pandemic. I think there was. It's not like deals were cancelled, but this most of the deal were just for temporary pause, and
Right.
now and that was the reason at the beginning of first quarter you saw a massive deal happening. And the trend is going to continue as you rightly pointed out, and I'm sure that it is going to be much more. And we speak to most of the our customers and potential customers who are looking for acquisitions. and we keep talking to them on regular basis. And I think the trend, if you look at in coming quarters, it's going to be on increase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have the similar kind of thought. I've been looking at the market, speaking to several deal makers, and I'm sure that this is going to be upside. So I'll just continue with the the same questions what I asked earlier. So the trend what you just spoke about, do you think this trend is going to continue indoor?
Well, I don't think anyone can predict whether trends will last anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, even those, I've been to several conferences this past year, and economists were even differing on, how long they thought that the post-pandemic lull would last. Even they were, all over the place. I think, given the pandemic and the fact that no one was really prepared for that to come, I think we've given up on forecasting. Also, though, what I would say, in relation to workforce trends, one trend that I hope continues is the greater emphasis on employees and the workforce. And frankly, some of this is coming from the fact that the workforce itself is saying, no, this doesn't work for me. Or you're hearing more pushback or more feedback from the workforce in general. You've heard about the Great Resignation, where a lot of people have reevaluated what work means to them and whether or not they are satisfied with their job. So a trend that I do see having an impact, whether it's long-term or not, I don't know, but the workforce having greater influence on what's happening in an organization and the structure and how it's implemented in an organization. I see that having some significant impact. And the other thing, Dharmendra, I would say is I've had more private equity reaching out to me, wanting to talk about the human capital challenges, having a greater awareness about the need for that type of advisement in an M&A deal. And I think they go hand in hand, right? The workforce being more vocal and private equity recognizing that there's an opportunity to be smarter about those challenges in advance to mitigate, the risks of a failure for future deals.
Yeah, of course. So, so do you think this changes help or hurt M&A deals? What do you think? This is going to be, so whatever changes currently you mentioned that is a kind of different trend you see. And so these changes is going to hurt, or in long term, what do you think?
I'd like to think they'll help. We've seen a persistent statistic, 70-90% M&A deals, and that's not just multi-billion-dollar deals, though those are the ones that tend to get the greatest press when those fail. Yeah. But you've seen failure in mid-market as well, where they don't achieve the valuation by year one. So my hope is that, certainly in the role that I play as a human capital advisor, that the trend of paying more attention to the workforce and anticipating, okay, what will be some of those challenges? How do we prepare for those to mitigate the risks that they can have for the deal? That trend will, in my view, help M&A in the long term. Certainly will improve the statistic of 70-90% failure, but we have to stay committed to it. We need to, and particularly in the role that you play with the integration and developing that platform, the more we think about the deal in advance and how to prepare for it, in my view, it sets the deal up for greater success long term.
Right. So I think, as you rightly pointed out, we also, when we start with customers, we start very early in the deal. So we don't go when, they have already closed the deal and they are thinking what to do, how to do integration. We just start talking to them, understanding their requirement, what is their integration strategy, when they want to really start integration, making sure that as soon as they are in between signing and closing, we are there, we are working with them, and we are part of their excellent team. So I think that helps. And I know that your day one and the people connect. I think this is very, very helpful to, get things right. So now if I just go to my next question. So, we are hearing lots of things about 2021, it's rebounds back. It's very strong, M&A performance post-pandemic. Now, what are the driving your optimistic outlook for M&A this year and the next year? What do you think?
Well, and I want to go back to a point that I made earlier because, I mentioned that unfortunately a lot of companies were under duress and had to be acquired because they couldn't survive. And I pause when I say that because I've actually had discussions about this with private equity in particular. It's not unfortunate. The reality is a lot of those businesses, that was their chance to survive. That was the chance for that business to keep going. So I think, oftentimes private equity gets a bad rap. There's a bit of a stigma that goes with it because of some of the, nightmare stories you've heard around mergers and acquisitions. But I also believe that the opportunity for private equity to really help businesses and create greater opportunities is there. And what I am optimistic about is that with private equity having that greater growing sensitivity around the workforce and an understanding that for that company to contribute, whether it's part of a portfolio of companies or, it's a new industry that they're breaking into, that will lead to greater success long term. And the more that private equity are aware of that and sensitive to that, I do think there's great opportunity for those businesses that potentially were going to be closing doors to be able to move forward. But the reality is the ones who are closing doors, that the very few of them were going to succeed on their own, and it probably we'll see how well they do even within the portfolio of a private equity firm. But I tend to be optimistic in general. So, my hope is that all of these factors combining will lead to greater success long term.
Yeah, thanks. So, now we talk about, how M&R are. So, how M&R for this of this year and next year, the outlook is very strong. And as you rightly pointed out that you see this, you are very optimistic about this. Now, my next question for you is, if you look at while driving M&A deals is a greater tool for company growth, creating value from deal is more important and integration is the most critical step towards it, right? How do you see companies getting prepared for post-merger integration?
Well, I think both of us have an opinion on this, right? Ideally, you're seeing more companies appreciating the need to focus on platform integration and systems integration and how that affects the ability of your workforce to be productive in year one. Because the longer you delay that integration of systems and operations and procedures, there's only so much your workforce can do. So, I'd love to hear from your perspective. From my perspective, I see more companies getting prepared by engaging me or other human capital advisors, wanting to be smart. And I'll give an example. I do an exercise that I do with executives is called a pre-mortem. So you're probably familiar with a post-mortem. It's the patient's dead, and you try and figure out why the patient died.
Right.
So let's think about that in a deal scenario, right? What are all the reasons that a deal could go wrong? Well, let's not wait. Let's do a pre-mortem and essentially a scenario plan. What are all the different ways? And it's almost a bit of a reverse SWOT, right? What are your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats? And what if a new political party comes in, or your competitor moves ahead on a product that you thought wasn't coming out till a year later? What are social influences that could undermine the success? And really go through those scenarios. And what I have found is that executives in particular will say to me, I'm so glad that we did that. That was insightful, right? Because you have people from the team. It also gives them an opportunity to see, how is everyone looking at this deal? Are we aligned on desired future state? Do we all agree on why we're doing this deal and what the opportunities are with it? Oftentimes people think they're on the same page, but it's through scenario planning and discussing and considering what would be our reactions that people realize, oh, well, this is slightly different than what I would have done, and we should discuss this. So I I see companies appreciating more that we need to do pre-planning. We need to think things through and be prepared to give this deal a greater chance for success. We can't just throw money at problems.
Exactly.
We need to be smart sooner in the deal negotiation to prepare for, a variety of scenarios.
Yeah. So I think, just I would like to add some points here. So, my background is also in integration. So I see the biggest change now. Earlier, what used to happen that, the transaction team, they are just closing the deal and then they hand over to business and then they never meet each other.
Right.
And now I see the biggest change what I have seen is if you are sponsoring a deal, your job is not getting over there. You are starting that. As soon as deal is
Right.
closed, you own the KPI to getting your business plan delivered, right? And your
Yes.
KPI is, monitored till deal is fully integrated. And the, post deal performance is monitored and, finally P&L, you show that, yeah, this is the deal value I have created. So earlier I have seen that, deal is done. There is no integration team. There is no integration manager. Manager also identified at the beginning of the deal. So now what happens? Deal is closed. Now business is looking for the guy who will be coming and integrating these companies. There is no involvement from the from the seller side. There is no team, right? They all are people are on part time. They are coming on and off. There is no focus. Some of the guys who are part of integration team, they don't know why they are here, right? So I saw lots of things. And now I see the big transition where the deal sponsor, he owns the KPI of delivering things. And then
that's where it needs to be, right? People have to own the KPIs. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I see the biggest change now. The people, as soon as you are trying to do a new deal, you are looking at first the integration guy. Who is the guy identified early in the deal, who will get involved in the due diligence process as well. So by the time deal is signed and closed, he know the deal objective. He have done a proper handover between the transaction team and integration team, and parallelly he's building the team. So
and
people
I'm glad you brought that up, because those are, I would say, I don't know if we'd say big transition, but I think we're starting to see that happen more consistently, right? So even that is a huge deal. And those are the people who are bringing me in, right? Who are seeing, okay, Jennifer can help us and our leadership anticipate what are some of the challenges, right? Everything from the stages of grief that a company might go through as the workforce grieves the loss of its old company, to the personalities that change and how to address that and work with that. And so it's an excellent point you raised, that the more that happens, the greater opportunity is to help sooner. As you and I both say, right, we want to help you before catastrophe. We want to avoid catastrophe. It's not fun for us when this is after the deal hasn't gone well. So the sooner that we can work with the transition team, the integration team, the better. 100% agree.
Right. So, that is the benefit which I have, and that's a skill, because I was at the problem side. Now I'm just solving that. So I know each and every step where we make mistakes and how we can do the correction. So as you rightly brought, most of people issue, they are great. But if you don't plan, it will become disaster, right?
Well, and I say the best analogy is, consider, a war plan, right? You don't just send your military in with a weapon and say, good luck, hope this goes well, right? They do drills, they do training, they prepare for all types of scenarios. So that's why, that pre-planning that you and I talk about, it's so you can be smart and prepared for all types of scenarios.
Exactly. So these are very important points, and if you don't do, I can tell you that most of the deals fail if you don't do this basic planning at the very early in the day. So coming to that, similar kind of question, mostly, if you look at most of the deal have people centric issue, right? Most of the time, what are the changes in trend that you see in managing people challenges during deal as well as post deal? What are your...
Well, actually, I think you just articulated it very well. It's the same thing I see. I think Would I say it's a huge transition? No, but we're starting to see a difference. Exactly as you said, it used to be they'd pass the baton, next team takes over, and off you go. But by not having, people in the deal throughout who have ownership, who have accountability of those key performance indicators, if they're involved in the beginning and they're just focused purely on the transaction, the financials, then another team inherits what one team has dictated, and the team who inherits it would say, well, we can't achieve this. This isn't possible. So I agree. Probably the greatest and most important one is identifying the fact that having a transition person leading throughout and being smart about the challenges and how they came to the valuations. I've had many conversations with private equity folks who have said afterwards, oftentimes you'll get it and you're trying to figure out, how did they come to these numbers? Where did this come from? How could this, and it's because of that fixation on let's just get the deal done. So the more that people have visibility on what drove this, how are we going to hit this? How do we think about this? And having that, that continuity throughout, will give the deal a greater chance for being successful in the long term.
Yeah, good. So, I have a last question. I know we are, we have very interesting topic. We can keep talking for hours and hours, and still it will be, very interesting for our audience. But I would like to ask, the last question is primarily on, the deal. If you look at traditional way of doing M&A deal execution, very complex and very manual, right? So when I was working and trying to integrate, any deal, the biggest challenge is people, the process, tools. There are 20, 30 different tools. There are lots of data, Excel sheet, document, and all are managed in different locations because deals are mostly cross-border. So what is your view on, if you get everything centralized in an integrated platform? So you are buyer side, seller side, your document, your process, your M&A, cookbook, everything is integrated within a system. How you think this is more value add for what you do, and what most of the enterprises, manage their, deal integration, but they are not organized well. So what is your view on?
I think how I feel, because we started our conversation on that. I think it's critical, absolutely important, because too often, and this happened in the deal scenarios that I experienced, by not thinking about centralizing that information and figuring out how do we connect all of these different systems, right? So that you don't have redundancies or inefficiencies from a systems operation standpoint. But again, that goes back to our earlier point. You need to think about that sooner in the deal due diligence, because in my experience, by waiting, you're leaving it up to the people who are trying to figure out, well, how do we combine this? How do we make these systems integrate? And the reality is, certainly in that first year, both companies are coming at this from the standpoint of, well, my system's better than your system. And it can be very difficult to be objective. And so I found oftentimes the arguments were about, well, we like our system. We just bought this system for, several $1 million, or we like our system. We've been using it for years. It works very well. So having a systems integration to the, what you do is absolutely imperative. I think the other important point of this is it sets the deal up for success faster, because if you've already identified the need to integrate and you've uncovered, okay, well, here's where we may have some issues, but you've given more time to the ability to integrate. If you're waiting until you announce the deal and then everyone's coming together, you've lost valuable time. So the sooner you can do that, because my focus, why this helps what I do, is it allows the managers to focus on the people and the vision, right? What is the vision? Where are we going with this? And how do I translate this vision for my team so we can start contributing to the vision? Without that systems integration, the manager's time is going to be consumed with, well, how do we make this work? And how do I get this system to work with this system? And so they're not focused on the vision. They're aggravated by the pain and suffering, of systems not communicating. So, but I already had that opinion because that's how we started talking. I think it's absolutely critical.
Yeah. So I think, we have, lots of other points. So surely we are, going to do another round of episode where we'll focus more on human capital, how to, and change management. So these are very critical. And I've seen during integration, entire integration, if you look at change management, start from very early till
Right.
it goes till it's fully integrated. And this
Yeah.
itself is a huge topic to talk about. So, next time I'll
We'll
surely
just
get
have
your
to
time.
keep calling each other. We'll have
Yeah,
conversations
right,
every
right. Exactly. So, we have, lots of knowledge, what you have learned while working with several customers. We have been practitioners. We are working with several large company, and we are also learning every day. So it is not like we stop learning. We are learning
Oh,
every day,
absolutely.
every type of.
Absolutely. I agree. I 100% agree. I think we're always learning. The important thing is to be aware that you're always learning, not to believe you know everything.
No, not
And
at
I
all.
live my life that way.
Yeah, this is the way we are, and the objective of our podcast is just to, increase the awareness, build, the knowledge base, what we have learned through several deals, and that will be helpful for our audience. So that is the whole objective of doing this, and surely we are going to do again. So thanks for your time,
Thanks for
and
having me.
thanks, thanks for your time, and talk to you again in the next webinar. So thank you, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you.
Thank